When nothing is, speaking isn't. Once, in the ancient times, there was a young Chinese scholar who, on his way home from his studies, passed some followers of the branch of the way known as Confucianism. The sky was turning into twilight, and the cherry blossoms were littering the ground with showers of petals that turned fuchsia and white in the shadows of the rising moon. The scholar had never met followers of the path of confusion before, and when interrogated by them as to where he was going and as to whom his master was, he responded, "As I have no master but my books, I would very much like to know the source of all mysteries, and to consult with an authentic master of the way." The followers of the confused path turned around and around in delight, saying, "Why, oh why, oh why, oh why?" And then the scholar, who was very intrigued by this riddle, said, "Because." Shocked by the simplicity and elegance of the young scholar's answer to the ancient conundrum passed through the generations of confused elders, the most confused of them said, "If you wish to know the question that you must ask, then you must consult with the Father of our way, and ask him which of your questions is the question that shall open up to further confusion. For it is through confusion that we find, in the clarity of our torment, the question that contains the answer to our deeper question." "Perhaps," responded the scholar, "I might find a book by your master, so that I may put my mind to rest as to answers, and become orphaned by all answers, and have only a single infinite question as you." And the most confused of these followers, the one who was verily bewildered, and whose hair hung down around his neck in mats, and who wore one wooden shoe, and one sandal made of paper and leaves woven together, and a hat which was partly torn from having been used as a pabulum for writing, said, "Go, instead of home, to the path that winds back behind the waterfall, even past the weeping pine, and next to an old shrine with 7 tiers honoring the nature spirits, you shall find our master Confucius's straw hut. Ask from him a book if you seek questions for your answers." Impressed by the confused method to the search for honesty and self-sowness, the scholar dropped his pack of books and left them with his gate openers as an offering in return for their welcome. He stood at the door of Confucius, which was slightly ajar, in the way that bamboo and straw-thatched doors tended to be in those days, and debated whether or not to have the audacity to enter without ringing the bell beforehand, but instead chose to either wait until he was noticed or, in the spirit of an adept of the confused way, to ring the bell, or again perhaps to enter without either waiting outside or without ringing the bell. Suddenly it began to rain in a mist that soon made the pines to glisten in the moonlight. The whole night smelled like pine at the foot of the waterfall. It was clear to the young scholar that he would risk catching the cold that was going around China then, and putting many in the sickbed for weeks with chilly feet if he were to wait outside any further. So he backed up 3 times and made his prostrations before the door of the teacher. And each time he backed up, he inched a foot or so closer to the bell, such that by the time he had completed his 3rd prostration, he had rear-entered the bell and had accidentally announced his arrival. Confucius himself answered the door and said, "Now, what kind of scholar are you that you wait so long to ring a simple bell? Please come in." And the young scholar bowed again and took off the simple shoes he had received from the merchant household, of which he was the third son, which were nonetheless better upholstered than a farmer's, and left them at the door. Sitting down in the only available chair in the front room of the hut, he noticed the scribe come out in a well-laundered black robe, sashed with a white belt, which was ruffled and a little torn at the ground where it had scraped repeatedly against the wooden floor of the hut. Confucius had retired to the kitchen and was preparing tea when the scribe unctuously bowed to the young scholar, asking him what it is that he seeks in his consultation with the great teacher of the way. "Please," said the young man, "I am a scholar, and I wish to have a book of Confucius's, the very one whose doctrine has already seen the branching of its sects into, among those that have flourished, the path of the confused, whose followers and adepts I met on my way home from my master's house. Confucius wishes that you sit a while and wait for him to bring you tea, and then you may ask from him in person what it is that you request, although, be it known, that I have no knowledge of the sect or creed of which you speak, nor of the followers whom you have said that you met along the way here." And when Confucius re-emerged from the kitchen of the small hut where he had been preparing tea, he asked the young man with the merchant's shoes what his purpose was in visiting him. "I wish to own one of your books," said the young man. "One of my books," said Confucius, and he continued, "I have no knowledge to teach you, and my books shall only lead you further along the path to confusion. Please wait here, and I shall bring tea." The young man waited a good half an hour to 45 minutes, and began to question why it was taking so long for his tea to come to him. And although it was pleasant to be in the hut of the master teacher of the way, he was beginning to get impatient. When the scribe went to sit down at his desk in the front room again, the young man said, "Most honorable sir, surely one word in the books that you are transcribing onto clean scrolls in well-cleansed ink, untainted by ignorance, shall open up 10,000 worlds to my spirit." Overhearing this statement made by the young scholar, whom however well read he must have been, could not wait long enough to form the dot under the question mark of his asking and to become a point of being. Confucius re-emerged from the kitchen and said, "Please wait, the tea is still steeping." Confucius then retired to the kitchen and did things that Confucius did in a Confucian way, known only to Confucius himself, before Confucianism became an historical phenomenon to any but to Confucius, the founder of Confucianism himself. Another half an hour passed, and the young scholar was anxious to have a book and began to get up and to pace around the front room of the master's household. Seeing that the impudence of the young man had ruled his character and had made it impossible for him to benefit from the lesson of his silence, Confucius re-emerged from his retreat into his own inner activity and entered the front room, asking the scribe to go and fetch the black book in the back of the back room, which was hidden under the stack of archived scrolls from 10 years ago. The scribe bowed, while his robe made the wisping sound of cloth scraping against wood that was so very much like the sound of a brush upon paper. When he had returned to the front room and handed the black book into the scholar's hands after raising it up towards his forehead. It was as if a complete scroll had been etched in the silence of the hut. There was a slight chill in the air, which made the bell knoll outside of the house slightly, amid the surfing of the pines in the wind. And there was just the faint smell of pine needles coming in through the window. Confucius said, "Please accept this humble book of wisdom for your journey. You may wait longer if you wish to enjoy a strain of our green tea with freshly hulled and baked rice in it." The young scholar was delighted to receive such a book, which would surely open up his mind to wonders upon wonders of insight after insight, and thanked Confucius, saying, "I shall honor this gift by putting it into application immediately and by taking the first step on my long journey home." And he prostrated himself to the elder of the great way and backed out of the front room and down the steps. Immediately, upon setting out on the trail, back down past the seven-tiered shrine and past the waterfall, he opened the book, but found that the book was completely empty, except for about 500 bound empty pages. The young scholar raced back and rang the bell, expecting Confucius to confess to having had made some mistake. However, when Confucius finally emerged from his hut, after much noise from the scholar, he said simply, "Do not think that I have failed in my duty to you as a teacher. Doing nothing is doing something." And this is what the scholar wrote on the first page of the empty book.
digereedoos.